Lee from Innovative Music Australia. Today we're going to have a look at the new Kemper Profiling Amplifier. The Kemper Profiling Amp is somewhat different to some of the other guitar amp substitute devices, I will call them, on the market. We have products from various companies that emulate guitar amps that allow us to record, do live shows without actually using a guitar amp. The Kemper is different in the fact that it's not emulating any amp as such. What it allows us to do is it allows us to capture the tone of any amplifier. So that includes all of our own amplifiers, it includes other people's amplifiers. If you're recording an album and you just happen to have that tone that's mic'd up and sounds great, you can capture that tone and it's there in the box and you can take it with you. It does this via a microphone or a line input, which can be done through external mic pre's, etc. It captures the whole tone from input stage through to speaker. And what it does is it calculates the breakpoints in all stages of that chain. So it pushes a series of pulses, which you'll hear as we do the profiling process shortly, through the amp, and it listens to the response through the microphone, and it calculates the breakage in the preamp, the power amp, and the speaker. And in doing so, it not only captures the tone, but it captures the complete essence of that amplifier. And what that enables us to do is then play it exactly the same way as we would play the amplifier itself. And this means that we can do things like rolling our volume back to clean up a tone. We can throw fuzz pedals, overdrive pedals, boost pedals in front of the Kemper itself, and it will actually sound and react exactly the same way as if we did it with the amplifier itself. First thing we're going to do is we're going to profile a Fender Twin on a clean channel, a little bit gritty, nothing spectacular. And we're just running it through a powered speaker box, nothing fancy. We're not doing the amp profile in an isolated room like we probably should be, so we can't do a direct comparison, etc. But we'll run through how the profiling process actually works, how long it takes, and what you can do to the profile after the fact. So we'll start off by getting some level through the amp. Okay, and then we'll proceed with the profiling process as simple as clicking next, selecting whether we're going to use a distorted profile or a clean. For something like a Twin, we're going to use a distorted profile because there is a little bit of breakup in the signal. And then we hit Start Profile. Okay, that's basically it. That's the first stage of the profiling. Now what we're going to do is we're going to refine the profile. When there is a distorted signal involved, there are some adjustments in the high frequency range that need to be done. And to do this, we simply click Refine and we just play a few chords. That should about do us. Now, because we're not in an isolated room, I'm going to turn off the Fender so that we can listen to the profile that we've just done. Okay, so there's our bass profile. It's captured the sound of the Twin that we've set up in this room with an SM57. Using the internal mic pre on the Kemper. So we're not using any external pre's. You can if you like. For this demonstration, it's basically out of the box what you can do with no extra tools, basically. So So once we have our profile, we're going to save it. And now that I'm back in browse mode, we can start looking at some of the features that the Kemper gives you after the fact. So number one feature that probably makes sense to everybody involved is that we have an arsenal of onboard effects. We have reverb, we have delay, we have modulation, so choruses, flange, there's a Leslie effect, all of that sort of stuff. There is also a series of virtual stomp boxes which are inserted at the input stage. We'll start at looking at some of the reverb. And we'll just make it so it's not so gnarly. Okay, so the standard reverb as a default is a hall. We can then edit the reverb simply by holding down the reverb button. You'll notice that the screen changes color depending on what you're doing, so different effects have different colors. Reverbs are green, overdrives are red, modulations are blue, etc. In this mode, we can select either a hall, a large room, a small room, or an ambient reverb. Very easy to get around. Anything you want to edit, hold it down, and you're in edit mode. Simple exit function to get out of it, and we can turn the reverb on and off simply by that switch there. You'll also notice that we have on the front panel a mix and time for the reverb, which is handy for a live situation, not necessarily more of a studio thing, but definitely live. And the same features apply for delay and modulation, which run across the top panel here. Over in the stomp box section, if we open up that, scroll through the red series, we have things like virtual tube screamers and whatnot. So if I bring up something like that, so there are things on board such as tube screamers, fuzz faces, boss distortion type of effects. Very real sounding, very nice. They are inserted at the input stage before the amp profile, so they work really well because of that. You have 4 positions for these. They can be whatever you like. So they can be modulations, they can be overdrives, EQs. You can insert volume pedals with using an expression pedal. There's also onboard wah-wah effects as well. And 4 of those easily accessible, as well as an extra effect send in the effects loop section, which simply has an X on it, and that is basically customizable. You can insert anything at that point that you wish, so that can be any of the stomp boxes can be inserted into the effects loop as well, just adding to the flexibility. So on the front of the unit, we also have standard amp controls the same way you would find on the front of any guitar amplifier. We have gain, bass, mid, treble, presence, and volume, independent of the actual output volume of the Kemper. So what these do is they actually give you control over the amp profile itself. Now, the EQ is based around a tone stack EQ, but it is DSP and it is effectively a post EQ because the profile that we are playing is a mic'd up signal. So we have captured a tone from preamp through to speaker cabinet, and we're EQing it with a guitar amp kind of EQ. So it's not going to give you the same results that the EQ on the amp would, based on the fact that it's just not the real EQ in the amp. But it is more than effective. It is a plus or minus 5 dB EQ. If we just look at some So we can do that on any profile, and it is independent per preset, for want of a better word, which on the Kemper is called a rig. So that can be saved an infinite amount of times. You can have multiple copies of the same